Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, 6:31. And this is the regular meeting of the Municipal Council for the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal for the month of February. And just for the benefit of some of the folks here, the council meets every Monday. First Monday of the month is Community Development Committee. That meets on the first Monday of the month and makes a number of recommendations to council, which will be coming forward here tonight. And then on the second Monday of the month, the Administration and Finance Committee meets, and it will also be bringing forward a number of recommendations that will be dealt with here tonight. And then the third Monday of the month, Councillor Cameron and chairs the Public Works meeting, and it's bringing forward a number of recommendations as well. So a lot of the business tonight is basically routine business that has been well discussed at those previous committee meetings. Now, before I call the motion to approve the agenda, I just want a couple of things. First of all, Councillor Dillabaugh sends regrets. Councillor Dillabaugh is attending the Good Roads Convention in Toronto. I think it was Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and part of Wednesday this week. And so he's not with us tonight. And then the second thing is I'm looking for an amendment to the agenda. I'd like to add item number 8L, and number 8L is going to be titled Ontario Job Site Challenge. And on your desks in front of you, I've put a copy of a motion that if the agenda is amended, the motion will be discussed at 8L of the agenda. So, I'm looking for well actually I have Deputy Mayor Deschamps as the mover to move the approval of the agenda as amended.
Yeah, so moved by myself, seconded by John Hunter, that Municipal Council approves the agenda as amended.
Yeah, I'm just going to put in as amended. And those in favor? And the motion is carried. Oh yeah, I didn't see the little ticky box here.
I take it.
You ticky did. Okay, yeah. All right, and item number 3 on the agenda is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Are there any disclosures here this evening?
No.
And so moving then to item number 4, delegations and presentations. We have none this evening, so we'll move to item number 5. Item number 5 on the agenda is the approval of minutes of previous council meetings. So first is the council meeting of January the 21st, Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hunter that Municipal Council receives and approves the minutes of regular council meeting dated January 21st, 2019.
Okay, thank you. Motion is on the floor. I'm going to deal with business arising from previous council minutes at the next item on the agenda. This is just to approve those minutes. Are there any errors or omissions?
Yeah, so on 5B for the closed.
Okay, so I'm dealing with 5A right now. Dealing with the minutes of January the 21st.
I'll wait till 5B.
Okay. So, errors or omissions? No. Those in favor of the minutes? Motion is carried. And so now at item 5B, the special meeting of January the 24th, Councillor Hunter.
Myself, second by Councillor Cameron, that the Municipal Council receives and approves the minutes of special council meeting dated January 24, 2019.
Okay, so now are there errors or omissions here?
So my question, Mr. Mayor, would be in regard to under number 4, the closed session, personal matter versus personnel matter.
Yes, we use the word personal. I don't know why that is.
So when we use it several times as personal instead of personnel, should it be personnel?
The personal is the individual.
Maybe the deputy clerk can explain why that is, but I know that that's been kicked around for about the last 5 years.
So again,
I would have to, through the chair, I'd have to double check The municipal act very quickly, because I didn't actually prepare these minutes, so it may well be personnel.
No,
But I
because,
believe it's just personal.
no, if you look at the motion that we used to go into closed sessions, the actual wording of the motion that we used to go into closed sessions is taken from the act. And I believe that we use the exact word.
And usually we do, I'd want to double confirm on the municipal act. It may be personal or personnel, I'd have to double check there, because I didn't write these minutes, so I
Okay.
can't confirm or deny which one would be 100%
That was
correct.
my
Okay.
If it is incorrect, I can go and
It's just
change it.
Yeah.
I can do a correction through it.
Okay, so first then to approve these minutes, and then we'll deal with business arising. Those in favor? Motion is carried. So minutes carry approval. Now, business arising from the minutes, either one of those two sets of minutes. Anyone? Okay, so I have one, nobody else putting up their hand, I have one, and it concerns the minutes of January the 21st, and page 1 of 9. And on page 1 of 9, under delegations and presentations, we had a presentation from Mr. Crawford, and he had requested that the township provide him with a copy of the FICE report and a number of other sign revitalization initiative. I'm just wondering if he got those reports as he had requested.
Through the chair, I'm not sure at this stage, but if we'll try to confirm that, and if not, we'll get those reports out.
Okay, so, okay, please do, because I know that he was interested to have them that evening. I'm hoping that he's got them by now. Okay, now, anybody else have any other questions of any other place? Hearing none. All right, hearing none, I'm about to go on then to item number 7 on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes of a number of meetings that took place during the month. The first is the Public Library Board meeting. We have 2 sets of minutes. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hunter that Municipal Council receives the minutes of the Public Library Board meeting dated December 22nd, 2019, and January 8th, 2019.
The first one was December 22nd, 2018. I'll make that change.
December 11th. December 11th, 2018. Sorry.
Oh, so it's long. Okay, yeah, no, so which date was the meeting?
The 11th.
It
Was
was
the
the
11th?
11th.
Okay, so I'll change both places here. And January the 8th, 2019. Okay, so, questions if any? Hearing none, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. So the 11th. And item number 7B, the Port Management Committee of January the 16th. Deputy Mayor.
I remove that municipal council receives the minutes of the Port Management Committee meetings dated January 16th, 2019. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter.
Thank you very much. Question is on the floor. Discussion if any.
None here.
Hearing none, we'll call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Minutes are approved. And then the budget meeting number 3 of January the 31st, Councillor Hunter.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council receives and approves the minutes of budget meeting number 3 dated January 31st, 2019.
Thank you very much. Motion is on the floor. Questions if any?
None here.
Hearing none, about to call the question. Those in favor,
Aye.
please signify. Motion is carried. And so then moving to 7D, the Community Development Committee meeting of February the 4th. Deputy Mayor Deshaw.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter, the municipal council receives and approves the minutes of the Community Development Committee meeting dated February the 4th.
Okay, questions, if any?
I have just one, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
It's on page 4, number 6, discussion items, LG Small Business Trade Show. I was just wondering what the date and place of that trade show will be.
Do we have an answer to that?
Through the chair, it is March 8th and March 9th.
March 8, 9?
Yes.
Leo Boygan, thank you.
At the Leo Boyden. That's correct.
Any others?
That's all.
Okay, so I have one I'm gonna ask about. I'll pose this question directly to the acting CAO. So on, actually, I don't have a date stamp on this letter. But we did receive a letter over the signature of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing advising us that the government's consultation on the Housing Supply Action Plan has come to a close. And I wanted to draw your attention to one part of that work that is focused on land use planning. And he points out it's the need to increase the supply and streamline the development approval process. Now, in the end sentence, he says, two sentences, I encourage you to consider the context of this streamlining work and its focus on the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement, as it may help to inform your local action. You may wish to consider an interim pause on some planning decisions or reviews of major planning documents, such as official plans or comprehensive zoning bylaw updates, until this work is completed. Now, my question is, the letters addressed to heads of council, did it come to the staff as well?
Through the chair, through council correspondence, and staff is aware of this letter.
Okay, now, was the letter circulated to our planner, Mr. Pence?
Through the chair, yes, it was.
Okay, all right. So can we have, I wanted to get that, make sure that that had happened. And then the second part of it is, can we then refer this letter to the next meeting of your Community Development Committee meeting, Community Development Committee, so that members of that committee are aware of the letter as well? Okay.
Yeah.
March 4th.
Great.
Okay. All right, so now I still have to call the question on the motion. The council receives and approves the minutes of that meeting. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And I'm at 7E, the budget meeting number 4, February the 7th. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hunter that Municipal Council receives and approves the minutes of budget meeting number 4 dated February 7th, 2019.
Thank you very much. Questions, of any? Motion is on the floor. Hearing none, those in favor of approving the minutes, motion is carried. Thank you. And item number 7F, the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance Committee of February the 11th, Councillor Hunter.
Myself, second by Councillor Cameron, that the Municipal Council receives and approves minutes of the Committee of the Whole Administration and Finance meeting dated February 11th, 2019.
Thank you very much. Questions, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And then 7G, the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities, Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hunter that Municipal Council receives and approves the minutes of the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facilities meeting dated February 19th, 2019.
Thank you very much. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. All right, now I'm moving then to item 8 on the agenda, and item 8 on the agenda is a number of action and information items coming forward from the various committee meetings. And the first is a severance application for Montroy. Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, second by Councillor Cameron, that the municipal council recommends in favor of severance application B 84-18 Montroy Curry as recommended by the Committee of Community Development Committee.
Thank you very much. Motion is on the floor. Discussion, if any. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. So, Mr. Montroy, you have the recommendation from council that will go now to county council. And county council is the consent granting authority. They take this recommendation and a number of other factors into account.
Okay, thank you.
And number 8B, severance application Mulder, Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor John Hunter, that municipal council recommends in favor of severance application B-131-18 Mulder as recommended by the Community Development Committee.
Okay, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And 8C, severance application Killick, Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you again. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Hunter that municipal council recommend in favor of severance application B-2-19 Killick, condition upon the following. 1, the agricultural lot to be retained must be sold to a bona fide farmer, and 2, a minor variance being granted to allow for the approximately 169-foot frontage deficiency on the severed parcel, and 3, the agricultural lot to be retained must be rezoned to prohibit residential use of the property, as recommended by the Community Development Committee.
Okay, so here's a severance application with a number of conditions. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. So the difference between yours, Mr. Montroy, and this one is this chap will have the number of conditions that he will have to satisfy.
I think that's so.
And 8D, the loan payout to Greenfield, Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, second by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council direct the treasurer to pay out the principal amount of $61,933.34 to RBC for the low lift station and continue to build Greenfield ethanol, the current monthly payment until May 2019, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Administration and Finance.
Okay, and just before I call the question on this, just by way of explanation, in 2009, the township took a loan of some $3.3 million to build the low lift pump station to take water from the St. Lawrence River to the Greenfield ethanol plant. And Greenfield has been paying the loan payments on that for the last 10 years. The loan actually matures on February the 5th, but there's 3 more months left to pay on it. And we're going to pay it out now and collect the remaining 3 or 4 payments from Greenfield if this motion passes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And I might also say that upon the last payment by Greenfield, the infrastructure that was built, that is to say the pipe leading from the St. Lawrence to Greenfield ethanol, becomes the property of the township. And for the past 10 years, Greenfield has, in addition to paying all the costs of operating that pipe, Greenfield has been paying an additional $20,000 per year that's gone into a reserve account, which now totals approximately, I think, $344,000. So now, where am I here? Loan payout Greenfield, and we've done that. 8E, the low lift station budget. And that one is is Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council approve the 2019 low lift station budget as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services and Facility.
Okay, so this budget goes to Greenfield each fall. It includes the $20,000 operating cost, or a $20,000 contribution to reserve, as well as all the operating costs. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. And then 8F, the 2018 Annual Water Report. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you again. It's moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that municipal council, 1, receive the 2018 annual water reports for CWS and EDS, and 2, direct staff to post the annual water reports to the township website, and 3, direct staff to notify users via social media and local newspaper of report availability, as recommended by the Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities.
Thank you very much. And again, council was pleased to receive those 2 reports on those 2 water supply systems, and the reports indicate that we have no non-compliances, and the staff has done an excellent job maintaining the systems over the review period. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried, and these reports are available to the public. And 8G, the Spencerville wastewater rate. Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hunter, or Councillor Cameron, excuse me, that municipal council, number 1, accept the recommendations contained in the rate study report, and 2, adopt a $7 or 1% annual increase to the base residential unit, and use the alternative rate structure for non-residential units, and 3, use a phase-in approach over a 2-year period for the address 22 Ryan Street, and as recommended by Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities.
Very good. Again, good discussion at the
Yeah.
committee level. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
So a new rate for the Spencerville system goes into effect with first billing. And then the 8H, which is the service line warranties marketing license renewal. Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council enact a 90-day termination clause contained in section 3A of the Service Line Warranties of Canada Incorporated Agreement, and direct staff to provide notice to the Service Line Warranties of Canada Incorporated. The township does not intend to renew the agreement as recommended by Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities.
Thank you very much. Motion's on the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And 8I, pre-budget approval for a few capital items. Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council authorize pre-budget approval for 4 capital projects: hot mix resurfacing, tandem axle plow truck, Smith Road culvert replacement, and chiller unit replacement as recommended by Committee of the Whole, Public Works, Environmental Services, and Facilities.
So I'm going to call a question on this one.
Just
Further discussion?
Yeah, just for my own, just refreshing my own memory, we were not committed to, this is just authorized tenders, but we're not committed to those, is that the way that discussion went? I'm just trying to get my head around it.
Okay, the way I understand it, or the way I took the discussion to end up, which resulted in this motion, was that we're authorizing the pre-budget approval of the 4 capital projects, but the actual determination of how the projects are going to be financed will be, how shall I say, hammered out during the budget discussions, during the final budget discussions. But in the meantime, the staff has authorization to proceed to what I might call final pricing. That's the way I understand.
Basically tendering them.
Basically tendering them, yes. Yeah. With financing package, because there was some question about whether we would, on one of them, whether we would actually cash flow out of current tax dollars, or whether we would lease over a period of time, or whether we would borrow from bank and pay bank back.
I think where I'm struggling was I
Yeah.
wasn't convinced on the chiller unit, but I think that it passed anyways when we voted on it, so it's all good.
Yes, it was recommended by the committee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Done here.
Hearing none, I'm about to call the question. Those in favor? Motion is carried. Oh, that's the wrong place for that. So now I'm at item 8J, which is the 2019 Port of Johnstown operating and capital budget. And Councillor Cameron, I believe you have that motion.
I do, thank you once again. Why do I get all the long ones tonight? It's moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that Municipal Council, 1, approves the Port of Johnstown 2019 operating budget revenues and expenses, and 2, approve the Port of Johnstown 2019 capital budget, and 3, with the understanding that the Port of Johnstown 2019 capital budget will be reduced by $2.2 million should the Port of Johnstown fail to arrange a Transport Canada Matching Funds grant agreement under the National Trade Corridor Fund for expenditure in the 2019 budget year, as recommended by the Port Management Committee.
Thank you very much. Again, good robust discussion at the committee level. Further discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. I'll speak further to the National Trade Corridors Fund later. And so then the 8A, council response to the auditor, Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that Municipal Council authorizes the mayor to sign the drafted response letter to the auditors as a requirement of the annual audit.
Okay, now, I'm gonna let this motion come forward, but I have some pretty serious concerns here. First of all, I want to thank the treasurer for drafting the response. The problem is that I had not seen the letter from the auditor. And I think most of the draft response came from the response that I made to the auditor last year when they sent out their audit planning letter to the Port of Johnstown. So there's a draft response here which I had not seen until today. And I really haven't had a chance to address myself to it in detail. So I would like some leeway to adjust the draft response, because I think there's maybe another issue or two that I would like to have included in that response letter. So my question is, I'm prepared to let the motion come forward with the understanding that there will be some changes made by me to the draft response. They won't be significant, I wouldn't think, but if council is not prepared to grant that request, then I'm going to ask for some changes to the motion. So I'd like to have some discussion here. You're prepared to let me spend some time on this draft response?
Yes, I would be, because I had the same question, Mr. Mayor, that I didn't see the letter prior to seeing this draft.
So we're, through the mayor, are we deferring then until the fourth Monday of March then?
Well, the problem is that in the letter which came, and this is one of the other things that's bothering me, the letter which came to the township was dated, I believe, if I'm right, January the 28th. And it was apparently addressed to council, but it didn't appear, which I find very unusual, because the auditor should know that the letter gets addressed to the mayor and council, comes to the attention of the mayor forwards it to council, or decides how it's going to be dealt with, but doesn't get sort of surprised by it. So that letter kind of requires that we respond to them by February the 28th, but I don't know that I regard that as a hard and fast date. And I read someplace, and I can't find it right now. I read someplace that they're not going to do their initial work here until, I think, April. Is it April? They're doing their work? So April, so theoretically, we could delay this response letter until the March meeting, or alternatively, you can leave it in my hands. Up to you. I want to just stop for a minute and just point out the significance of the letter. I'm just going to take a minute to do that. I just have to find my little file here. I know that the clerk provided me with a file. I just got to put my hands on it. Here it is. So to start with, these letters from the auditors, and I've just finished the one that went to the county council auditor. These letters that are coming from these auditors are a new development in municipal auditing. The first one I saw was last year. It came to the port. And basically what the auditor is saying is, this is how I'm going to conduct my audit. This is how I'm going to conduct my audit. But you, as the governing body, are responsible for the financial affairs of the municipality. So, I have a number of questions for you. And this is the way the one was written that came to the county. I have a number of questions for you. What oversight, if any, do you, the governing body, council, provide over management's processes for identifying and responding to fraud risks? Management's processes could include policies, procedures, programs, or controls that serve to prevent, detect, and deter fraud. And the reason I'm emphasizing that question is because the auditor is not responsible for detecting fraud. The auditor is only responsible for expressing an opinion on management's financial statement. And the financial statements are the responsibility of the council through management, through the treasurer. So what is supposed to happen is that the treasurer is supposed to prepare the township's financial statements in their entirety, and then the auditor merely tests within the organization to assure that those financial statements are free of any material misstatement, and he expresses an opinion. The second question that he asks is, do you have any knowledge of any actual, suspected, or alleged fraud, including misappropriation of assets or manipulation of the financial statements affecting the entity? If so, provide details and how the fraud or allegations of fraud were addressed. And then the other thing that he outlines in his letter to the treasurer on January the 10th is management responsibility. The operations of the municipality are under the control of management, which has the responsibility for the accurate recording of transactions and the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So it's really important that these letters be answered, because that's how the governing body says to the auditor, we have been watching things. This is how we watch things, this is how we control things. Now, the draft that the treasurer has prepared, which you see in front of you, is pretty comprehensive. But again, I've only had 20 minutes this afternoon to look on it. I was away the weekend at a funeral out of town. So I would like more time to deal with it. So, the choice is up to yours, up to you. We can defray approving the letter or authorizing the mayor to sign the letter until March, or you can leave it in my hands and I'll circulate you the final draft and see if there are any questions arising from the final draft. But I need some direction from the council.
I think the second option you gave us, leave it in your hands and you get back to us, I think that's fine, as far as I'm concerned.
Are other members content with that? Because if you are, then I'm going to call the question on this motion that's on the table right now.
I don't have a problem as long as you reevaluate it and send us a copy before it's sent to the auditors.
Okay, well, I'll circulate the final draft then, if that's okay. Okay?
Yeah, so for myself, the the wording before the question, or ahead of question one is that the council reviewed the audit planning letter. I haven't seen an audit planning
Exactly.
letter.
Yes.
So I'm not comfortable putting my name on anything that says that I have seen something when I haven't seen it, first of all. For me, with that in mind, if I get to see the letter and read what it's asking, I'm not going to agree to something I haven't seen.
Okay, so would you be satisfied if we circulated the material that we received from the auditor, so that you can have a look at it? And I'll just point out to you that there are about 3 pieces. First of all, there's this audit service plan. And again, this bothers me. It's addressed to the Corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal. It's the audit service plan for the year ending December the 31st, 2018, for presentation to the council. And I didn't see it until today. So I couldn't make it into your hands, and because not having seen it myself.
Yeah, so it might be better if we all end up with a copy of it and we look at it at a later date.
Proceed on from that.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's-
All right, I think we'll do that
I'm more
then.
comfortable
Yeah.
with that.
Okay, fair enough. So, then what I'm gonna do is I'll turn to the mover and the seconder and ask the mover and the seconder if they're prepared to put forth a motion to defer to the March meeting.
So, I'm quite prepared to do that. Do we have a date for that?
Well, if we say
Do
that.
we need it
if
for
we-
the,
if
for the
we-
regular council meeting of March?
Yes, we can say
Okay,
that.
so I'll
But I'm wondering if,
Admin and finance.
yes, I'm wondering if we could maybe defer it until, generally a motion to defer should indicate when it's gonna be next dealt with. And I'm kinda half thinking that we should maybe deal with this at the Admin Finance Committee meeting as an agenda item. We'll circulate the materials ahead of
as
time.
long as I get the.
Deal with it at the Admin Finance Committee meeting, and then maybe have a special council meeting just to approve that letter. I don't really wanna send it out without council approval, to be honest with you. Okay?
That's fine.
Yeah, so can we say defer to a later date? Can I get a motion to defer to a later date?
Is that clear enough?
Through the chair, we should really be setting an actual date. Because if we defer to a later date, it can just go on and on and
What's the
on.
date of our admin finance?
Okay, what if we say to defer to a date no later than March the something? Defer to a date no later than, what's our March meeting date? March the 20, should be the same as today.
Yes.
March the 25th?
25th.
March 25th, 2018. All right, so I need a mover and a seconder that we defer this to a date no later than March the 25th.
Yep.
Okay, so Councillor Deschamps, or Deputy Mayor Deschamps, And a seconder for that motion?
Yes, I'll second that.
Councillor Cameron. Okay, so now voting on the motion to defer. Those in favor of the motion to defer?
Aye.
Okay, the motion to defer is carried. Okay, now, where are we here? That goes there. All right, and then, so now I'm at item 8L, which is the Ontario Job Site Challenge motion that was added to the agenda. Doesn't have a mover and a seconder, so, yes, okay, probably we should get it on the floor
Want me to
first.
to sign this copy?
Yes, you can use that copy.
So
Yeah.
I'll move it.
Now you don't have one to look at.
Well, I'll get that one back. Well, here, just trade with me.
Yeah, just straight. Okay, that's good.
And am I reading the entire thing?
That's up to you. You moved it.
That's fine. I just, that's, I was
I
kind
think
of
he has
thinking back
to.
to Councilor Cameron.
Cameron.
After I got so excited about signing it, I was like, wait a second, it's 12 pages long. All right, so moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Hunter. Whereas in February 2019, the province of Ontario released a white paper titled Driving Prosperity, the future of Ontario's automotive sector, which lays out a strategy to meet the future needs over the next 10 years of Ontario's automotive industry. And whereas one of the major needs for the future expansion of the automotive industry in Ontario is the availability of large acreage, 500 to 1,500 acres, serviced land. And whereas on page 13 of the white paper, the province put forward a job site challenge, a competition, open to municipalities, economic development corporations, and industrial developers for a site 500 to 1,500 acres capable of attracting a new assembly plan, and in Ontario would partner with the winning proponent on site readiness and servicing to ensure the development opportunity is competitive. And whereas a joint letter over the signatures of the Minister of Economic Development and the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing dated February 20th, 2019, addressed to the heads of council, Minister Steve Clark and Minister Todd Smith, specifically refer to the job site challenge and commit to working with successful proponents to make sure the development opportunities are competitive. And whereas the province of Ontario, through Infrastructure Ontario, already owns large-scale acreages in the township of Edwardsburg Cardinal, which would meet the requirements of automakers seeking to build or expand an auto assembly plant. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal hereby nominates itself for the Ontario Job Site Challenge and commits to working with the province of Ontario to help create a competitive, shovel-ready site where an automaker can build a plant and bring thousands of good-paying jobs to the community. And furthermore, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal hereby commits to streamlining the approval processes for planning, environmental, and servicing in order to bring the identified properties up to Ontario's Certified Site Investment Ready standard.
Take a breath now.
Okay, so I just want to, before we get into a discussion of this, bring a number of things to your attention. And the first is, and I'm sorry, I thought that this had been circulated. This is the white paper that was released on February the 15th and was brought to my attention. And on page 13 of the paper, they indicate a job site challenge, a competition open to municipalities, etc., etc. Now, clearly this is not an initiative that came from either Minister Clark or Minister Smith. This initiative came from the entire government. And it was followed up by a letter that was circulated to heads of council on the 20th. And that letter makes it very clear that Smith and Clark are prepared to work with the successful proponents of this job site challenge to bring the site, wherever it may happen to be, up to the standard of the Ontario Certified Site Program. And furthermore, the province of Ontario already owns 10,000 acres in our township. And so out of that 10,000 acres, surely to goodness, we can find some place where we can find 1,500 or so acres, which would be close enough and had the potential for developing. The only thing that they will need, that site will need, that it doesn't already have, is sewer and water. Zoning's in place, I think. Official plan is in place. So, all this motion is intended to do is get us into the process at this point in time. Now, the other thing I want to add to that is that the same opportunity has been presented to the CAO of the United Counties. And I have, in discussion today, learned that United Counties will be asked to nominate into the process. Again, as you can realize, there's no specific pieces of land identified here because that only drives speculation. But clearly, the land that's in the land bank is not subject to speculation as it's already owned by the government. So, looking for additional discussion before I call the question here. I have no idea where this is going. Are you prepared to deal with the question?
No.
Go ahead.
I can see that we own the, government owns the land, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt that it's cost the township of Edgeworth and now the township of Edgeworth cardinal millions of dollars in lost revenue over the last 40 years that they've been sitting on it, and lost development, and lost taxes, and lost jobs in land that's been tied up virtually in a standstill mode for 40 years or more. My only problem with it is that it was a question even when it was being bought, how were they going to get water to it? The only place we can draw it from that makes any common sense would be the St. Lawrence River, and most of the land we're talking at least 1.5 miles of pipeline to get it to it. It is feasible, there's no doubt about that. If we look at the trot of the distance that water's being pulled there to Mississauga and stuff, that they're on the lake, but they're pulling it miles away to service. So is it feasible? Probably, I think so. If we have for the township by ourselves without the government initiative, I think we're dead on it. But if we can swing a little weight with our Ontario government there, that we have a conservative government in power now. It was a conservative government that bought this land in the first place. Maybe they'd like to make themselves look good and make use of it after 40 years. It actually brings jobs into the area that they promised when they were buying it. So I'm all for it. I think if we can push forward and show a little enthusiasm, we'd like it. Something like that here.
Well, I know, I appreciate your comments. Any follow-ups?
Excuse me. I concur with Councillor Hunter. I think at this point in time, there's really no financial implication. So why not? Let's see where it goes. And if we want to play, we'll be there.
Sure. I'll take it one step further than that. I concur with both the councillors have said. It's land that is owned by Infrastructure Ontario, large-scale acreages. And it says in their own words, I'm going to read it again, working with the province of Ontario to help create a competitive shovel-ready site where an automaker can build a plant to bring thousands of good-paying jobs to the community. They also say Ontario's certified site-ready investment. We know what that's done for the Johnstown site. To not express an interest and support that idea, to me, seems kind of crazy. This is wonderful if it's to happen. So,
Well, the thing that gives me impetus here is the fact that in the letter that we got from the two ministers on February the 20th, I just want to go a little bit further with it. As you know, one of the biggest barriers automakers face if they want to build or expand an auto assembly plant is the availability of large-scale sites for manufacturing. The auto sector is generally concentrated in densely populated parts of Ontario where it isn't easy to find the right site. And I take it from that there's some pretty high-level discussions going on someplace
Sure.
that are 5 years ahead, and the Ontario government's trying to get ready for it. So, if there's no further discussion, I'm about to call a question on this motion. Those in, I'm gonna request a recorded vote, and because if I read the table right, I'm going to make advantage of this. Councillor Cameron.
That would be a yay.
Now, Councillor Dillabaugh, I'm gonna mark absent. Councillor Hunter.
Yay.
Deputy Mayor.
Emphatic, yay.
And myself will vote yay. And so I'm going to declare the motion carried and carried unanimously. And we'll have it submitted as soon as possible by the staff and see what happens next. And so now I'm at item 9 on the agenda. Item 9 on the agenda is the correspondence list. Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, second by Councillor Cameron, unless the council receives the corporation listings for the following dates as previously circulated: January 31st, 2019, February 14th, 2019.
Okay, the motion on the table, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. 2 correspondence packages. And then item number 10 on the agenda is approval of the disbursement sheets. Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that municipal council approves payment of municipal invoices circulated and dated as follows. Report dated January 22nd, 2019, $635.63. Report dated February 1st, 2019, $373,016.11. Report dated February 11th, 2019, $116,114.21. Report dated February 20th, 2019, $581,978.98, for a total of $1,071,744.93.
Okay, motion is on the floor. The disbursement sheets have been circulated prior to the council meeting. Discussion, if any? Hearing none, those in favor? Motion is carried. Okay, and so now I'm at various bylaws, item number 11. And 11A is a council staff relations policy. Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps. Mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt the council staff relations policy, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously. Go ahead, Councillor Hunter.
Move myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that bylaw to adopt the council staff relations policy be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2019-06.
Third reading on the bylaw. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And the next bylaw is 11B, the Spencerville wastewater rate bylaw. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you again. It's moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt the estimates and impose sewer rates for users of the Spencerville sewer system and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Thank you very much. First and second reading for the Spencerville rates for 2019. Discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And go ahead, unanimous.
Yes, thank you again. It's moved by myself and seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps that a bylaw to adopt the estimates and impose sewer rates for the users of the Spencerville sewer system be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2019-07.
Third reading, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. So the new rate for Spencerville will be a 1% increase over last year. Total cost over last year, $7 to the residential homeowner. And we've adopted a new, as a result of the service rate study, we've adopted a new system, and that new system will provide some relief to the local Legion. And so now I'm on bylaw 11C, which is the cardinal water and wastewater rate budget rates. And let's see, that's Councillor Hunter.
Moved myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to amend bylaw 2013-69 to impose water and wastewater rates for users of the Cardinal water and wastewater system, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, first and second reading for the cardinal system. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously. Go ahead, Councillor.
Moved myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 2013-69 to impose water and wastewater rates for the users of the Cardinal water and wastewater system be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2019-08.
Thank you very much. Those in favor of third reading, please
Aye.
signify. Motion is carried. So both of those systems will see a 3% increase. On the water system, a 3% increase amounts to $8.72 a year. And on the wastewater system, a 3% increase rate amounts to $9.42 per year. So those rates will now be effective for the full term of the 2019 billing. And bylaw 11D, the interim tax levy. Deputy Mayor Deschamps.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to authorize an interim tax levy in advance of the adoption of the tax rates for 2019, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Okay, discussion if any. Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Go ahead, please. Third reading.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that a bylaw to introduce an interim tax levy in advance of the adoption of the tax rates for 2019 be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, and numbered 2019-09.
Okay, and those in favor of third reading?
Aye.
So this now enables the staff to send out the interim tax bills in the amount of 50% of last year's tax bill. And so now, I'm at item number 12 on the agenda, which is the CAO's administrative update. We'll put the motion on the floor. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thank you again. It's moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that Municipal Council receives the CAO's administrative report as presented. I have some questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, well, let's give the CAO a chance to speak first.
Okay.
So, I should say the acting
Acting
CAO.
CAO.
Go ahead, Mr. Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, the deputy clerk has an update on, with respect to the question raised on 5B on the special meeting with the personnel.
Yes, I just wanted to double confirm before I confirmed with you guys on the municipal act. It is personal matters, and the reason we do that instead of personnel limits us to personnel within the municipality, i.e. employees, officers, council, etc., etc. If we do personal matters, it extends that to a very broad category, so there could be even an issue raised by somebody within or outside of the municipality for even things of age, race, sex, education, medical concern, a grievance, which was addressed in the last one, either a grievance through the union, through staff, through code of conduct, even in regards to the Municipal Freedom of Information Act, about disclosing personal information about an employee or an officer or a counselor or something were to be requested under the Municipal Information Act. So it's very, very broad compared to limiting it to just personnel. It could be even something of somebody submitting a claim against the municipality. We go into closed session because we do not want to disclose that person's identity.
Okay.
It saves everyone for potential additional grievances.
And because the act is written the way the act is, rather than have to distinguish whether we're dealing something internal or something external,
Correct,
we use the broader term all the time.
correct.
Ah, okay.
So I can expect to see personal all the time?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully never again.
See it lots. Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to highlight a couple of the upcoming meetings. March 7th, budget meeting number 5, and also on March 28th, budget meeting number 6. With respect to the official plan review, the public open house is scheduled for April 11th from 6:30 to 8:30 here in the council chambers. With respect to treasury, the tax registration, just to highlight that the cancellation certificate was issued for the tax sale property in Cardinal. Full payment of the tax arrears was received.
what was the closing date on that? I can't remember. It's getting close.
It was getting close. I will defer to the treasurer.
Sure, through the chair, that was Wednesday, this Wednesday, the 22nd.
Oh, seriously?
Under the wire.
Oh, just before you go on, the treasurer had indicated that we have some other properties that are in the tax sale circuit, if I can put it that way. Do we know when the next series of advertisements will take place?
Right off the top of my head, I can't say for sure. I think potentially June
June?
is ringing a bell with me, but I would have to look and see. And, yeah.
Go ahead.
I'll highlight in insurance, we had a presentation from BFL Canada, from Lawrence McMillan. We've now received our insurance premium, and there has been an increase.
Pretty substantial.
I'll say,
8%?
it was
Yes.
an expensive meeting.
It has been. With respect, it was mentioned earlier, the auditors are scheduled to be on site April 8th to the 12th to complete the 2018 audit. Facilities and recreation, just we have accepted the resignation of Enza Hart, effective April 25th, 2019. And the facility and recreation manager has completed interviews for replacements, and we're pleased to have Alex Modler join the department on March 4th, and Josh Burchell April 1st.
Okay, just before you go on there, can you just refresh my memory? Have we had 3 resignations? Because down in operations under Public Works, I see we have a resignation there. And then, have we then had 2 additionals in the facilities recreation, or 1 additional?
Thank you. So what has happened, we have had a resignation in Public Works, and one of the recreation facility operators will be transferring over to Public Works.
Is that Jay
That
Simser?
is Jay Simser.
Okay,
So that would have had 1 opening, and now we've received the resignation of Enza Hart, so that is 2 openings. So we'll be replacing 2 positions that will be vacant in the recreation.
okay, so if Mr. Simser transitions sometime in March, then it looks like one additional new hire is coming on the 4th of March. And the other additional new hire is coming on April the 1st to replace somebody that's not leaving till April the 25th. Are we gonna be having duplicate, or doubling up there?
So, through the chair, there may be a 2 or 3 week period where there may be double during that training and transition, so that we can have a smooth transition. With respect to the first hire on March 4th, there'll be about a 2 week training period while Mr. Jay Simser remains at Recreation to bring the new operator up to speed before Jay transitions over to Public Works.
Okay, now, I want to bring this up because one of the questions that I was asked today was, when we advertise these positions in Recreation, we advertised for certain skills. And so I find out today that these positions are filled, when I'm reading my package, that these positions are filled. And I'm getting questions from someone who was extremely well qualified that didn't seem to have any response to their application. Are the people that were hired, are they fully qualified to suit the specifications that were required in the ad? And if so, why would there be a necessity for an overlap?
So through the chair, I certainly can't answer to the entire qualifications of the two hires. Naturally, coming into a position, they're regardless of whether there's skill sets that are there before, each system is a little bit different, and it makes sense to have four or five shifts where they can the new individual can work through the routine.
Well, 4 or 5 shifts I can see, but we're getting April the 1st and April the 25th, which is almost 3 weeks.
So in that time period, there may be 6 or 7 shifts involved in that time frame.
Yeah, but they don't have to shadow just the person that they're replacing, don't they work within the department?
I believe that the facilities manager has scheduled it so that they're working with the individual that they would be replacing.
So anyway, long and short of it is, all the positions that were vacant are now filled.
And that is correct.
Okay, the public works and 2 in the recreation facilities.
That is correct.
Anybody else have any questions at that before the CAO goes on?
Actually, yes, Mr. Mayor, I do. We're talking about the same 2 individuals again, or the same HR note, and I would just like to know, are these the 2, the March 4th hire and the April 1st hire? Are these just attendants?
What is the actual position name?
Through the chair, I believe the proper one is facility operator. I believe it's facility operator / attendant.
Yeah, okay, so it's not a management position.
That is correct.
Okay.
It is a union position.
Okay, and the other, is one going to be at the Ingredient Center and one at the Spencerville Arena, or are they, what are the locations for the 2?
Through the chair, as part of the transition, they will both have their training done at the Ingredient Center.
Okay, is that where they will be working when they're finished?
The facility manager will likely decide next winter season.
I see.
There may be some changes
Yes.
in their location.
Yes, I can
next
see
winter
this.
season.
This season is almost finished. Now, my last question is, on the same topic, is, do you have any idea of the number of applications we received for those two positions.
Off the top of my head, I do not know the actual number of applications received.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Before, when we're talking about these two people that hired, regardless of how many applications or whatnot, we seem to have, over the last number of hires we've had, we haven't really had that many people that's been hired, I guess you'd say, that lived and grew up in the township, and both of these people have, so I'm quite pleased to see us hiring people for our positions from within our township, so.
Good point. Good point.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Grant, you can go on, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Under operations for Public Works, I guess, I believe I noted last week that we can certainly anticipate a higher number of pothole repairs over the next several months as we transition into the spring, and half load restriction signage will likely be posted the first week of March. Under operations environmental services, just bring your attention that we had a temporary repair to the flat roof at the wastewater treatment plant. It appears that there was some tears in the membrane. I have not heard further reports from the precipitation we received over the weekend, so it appears that the temporary repairs have held. And a more fulsome repair will be completed spring or summer.
Just before you go on, can we just jump up to 2 blocks above that? Two properties had water shut off at the property line. It says we were notified by a neighbor that could hear water running. It must have been a fair noise if a neighbor complained we shut it off. Was there a break? Are these vacant properties, or the empty houses, or what are they?
So through the chair, it would appear that both of these properties are vacant.
In other words, no building on the property? Or there's a building that's empty?
There's a building that's empty,
There's a building that's empty,
yes.
and water running inside the building?
That is correct on the one occurrence where the neighbor did call.
Oh. So now the cost of, we charge to disconnect and then to reconnect, do we not?
There is a reconnection charge.
That goes against that property, or against that tax, on that tax?
Typically, there's not a connection and reconnection fee charge for simply turning the water off to that property.
Okay, so now, have the two owners of these properties, have they been notified that they're disconnected?
We have sent a letter to the last known owner, and to this date, I don't believe we've received any response.
Oh my goodness. So here we have two owners that don't even know that their water is running on their property. Councillor Cameron?
Yes, on the same topic, are both these units have meters?
Through the chair, as far as I'm aware.
Thank you.
Councillor Hunter?
Just jump back up to our public works, we're talking about putting half loads on sometime in March on our Miller Road culvert there that we're gonna replace. The operation manager, you said that the chance of this culvert failing there, should we be looking at a load restriction over that culvert until we get it replaced?
Through the chair, with respect to the Smith Road culvert?
Yeah.
Smith Road.
Smith Road, yes.
Yes, there should be some thought given to putting up a load restriction.
I noticed today they're pushing to get loads out before half loads on there. I didn't know if it's in that bad a shape, maybe we should be looking pretty quick at getting their half load signs on that road.
On that location. But that certainly can be noted.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Grant.
So I finish up with the fire department, the training opportunity. There's a one-day essentials of municipal fire protection on May 11th. It is in the township of Augusta. So registration is required prior to March 28th.
Now, that's the one that, is that the Merck Hall, is it?
That is correct.
Okay. Did I get registered? Thank you. That it? Any other questions of Mr. Grant before I call,
I have one, thank you.
before I call the question to approve the report? Okay, so the motion is on the table to approve the report. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. All right, and so now I'm on item number 13, which is councilor inquiries or notices of motions. Anybody have anything to bring forward? Okay, moving to item 14, which is the mayor's report. We'll get the motion on the table, and then I'll make a short report.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Cameron, the municipal council receives the mayor's report as presented.
Okay, so a number of things to report, actually. So first of all, the National Trade Corridors Fund, and I did send everybody a kind of a cursory little note after our conversation. And I want to acknowledge the help, the tremendous help that we had from the Chamber of Marine Commerce, Sarah Douglas. Because Sarah Douglas found the contact at the National Trade Corridors Fund and got us in touch with the acting director of the fund, Mr. James McCrae. And then Sarah also arranged the telephone conference with James McCrae and the manager that works directly under James McCrae. So the conversation was about a half hour long, and I started by asking Mr. McCrae if he would give me about 3 minutes to introduce the Port of Johnstown and what we did. And suffice it to say that he had done a little bit of work ahead of time and thought that the Port of Johnstown was strictly salt. But when I pointed out that we had a major elevator and that we did do a tremendous amount of grain movement, and that we actually exported grain from that elevator, he was very interested in hearing more. So we pointed out to him that in 2018 we loaded 17 vessels that were taking grain crops from Eastern Ontario for export into European markets. 3 of those ships went directly from our elevator to their final destination. The other ships went as far as Quebec, where the loads were transloaded onto the new Panamax ships. And you know, so there's about 30 or 40,000 tons comes out of our elevator, and then that gets combined with 30 or 40,000 tons from someplace else. The Panamax ships will take up to 100,000 tons. So when he heard that we were facing the restriction that our spouts, our loading spouts, were getting aged and needed to be replaced, he was very, very enthusiastic, felt that we definitely satisfied the criteria. So I asked him to explain a little bit more about how his fund worked. So to start with, their fund will only pay up to 50% of the capital costs of the project that we're proposing. And I said, well, that's fine. We have our project defined, and I held off holding this call until I had our budget in place. And I said, so on Monday night, we approved our budget, and we have our 50% of our ask in place. Well, he said, that meets all of our basic minimum requirements, but it's a 2-step process. So the first step is that we submit an expression of interest, and then they review that expression of interest to see whether it's complete and satisfies all their requirement. And if it does, they tell us that we're then invited to prepare a comprehensive project plan. And if we're invited to prepare a comprehensive project plan, we have 60 days to get that put together. I said, well, 60 days is kind of a short time. Tell us how you will evaluate our comprehensive project plan if we get invited to do one. So he said, well, one of the things that we look for is what partners do you have that will contribute to this capital cost? And I said, well, we thought that by having our 50%, that would be sufficient. He said, well, one of the things that we look for, because this is a very competitive process, one of the things that we look for is, do you have other partners? And I said, well, suppose we could find a broker that would contribute something. Yes, that would be great, but what about the province of Ontario? Will they contribute? And I said, well, we never thought about them because we didn't realize that that was part of it. But now that you've brought that to our attention, we'll explore that avenue as well. So I told him that one of the main reasons that we wanted to have this conversation, because I didn't want to just have Robert push a button to submit his expression of interest, and it goes into a void someplace and nobody knows what Port of Johnstown is. And he said, no, we understand that. And Elizabeth, the other lady that was on the phone, will be watching that portal for your submission, and we will get on it right away. We will receive it instantly and we will get on it right away. And you will hear from us almost immediately if there's any deficiencies in the application. And if there's any additional information that you need, you'll be invited to submit it. And then he said within 2 to 3 weeks, we will tell you whether you're invited to the second step. So on that note, we basically ended the conversation and had a little bit of a debrief with Councillor Cameron, who was on the call, and Mr. Daly, who was on the call. And Mr. Daly undertook to approach one of our brokers to see if we can get our broker to contribute as a partner to the capital cost. And in addition to that, I met this morning with the MP's office, MPP's office, the provincial member of parliament. I met with in his office to see whether or not the province of Ontario would be able to participate. So both of those things are kind of in the mix, if I can put it that way. And the reason that I wanted to approach the provincial government today, rather than let it wait another day, is because to get a letter out of the province is not going to be able to be done in 60 days. I can almost guarantee it. So I'm sort of hoping to get about a 30-day head start by going today to the MPP's office. So that kind of brings everybody up to date with where we are with the National Trade Corridors Fund. Now, Mr. Daly has indicated to me that he will have his expression of interest submitted by Friday of this week. As you know, he was very busy in the last 2 or 3 weeks getting his budget ready, and it certainly paid dividends to be able to say to Mr. McCrae, our budget is in place, we have our money. So that's good news. So next item on my little report, the county council budget basically was approved at our county council meeting on Thursday. We've added, I think I've reported this before, we added 8 additional paramedics to the paramedic crew. We've added 1 additional ambulance, and so there are 2 stations which will now function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 2 more stations which will now function 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're going to be replacing 3 older ambulances. The new budget, or the budget that's approved, will raise about $40 million in taxation with no increase in the county tax rate, due to the extra $592,000 that will come from assessment growth that occurred in the county with new builds during the year, and the extra $914,000 that's going to come from the year 3 phase-in. The budget basically recognizes a capital program of about $14.5 million, of which $12.3 million will be spent on the roads department, of which, and I don't have the number, but I think it's about $2 million that will be spent on County Road 21, between County Road 44 and County Road 22. And I know, Councillor Hunter, you were asking me, where's the tender? And I went back, and on December the 20th, County Council gave authorization for that project to be tendered, and I erroneously thought that the tender was ready to go out the door, but in fact it isn't. So that's why it hasn't been received, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because then I was able to say, well, why is the staff asking us 60 days in advance to tender a project when they don't have the tender document ready? So I'm assured that that tender will be released in the next very few days, and you can tell your inquirers, whoever they may be, that it'll be electronic tendering and it'll be out very soon. I think that you've all, next item, I think you've all seen the letter that we had from the Minister of Finance telling us that our Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund would be in the same amounts as last year. I believe it's the, is it the identical amount? Have they confirmed that?
Yeah, they haven't really confirmed it, but I'm reading the letter to state that that's what it is for 2019.
Yes, and I think, so that removes sort of one of the questions. We were held over our head into budget discussions.
Is it ever?
Yeah, and next thing I wanted to report is that the St. Lawrence Corridor Economic Development Commission will be holding an orientation session on Wednesday, March the 20th from 1 to 4. I know that doesn't fit very good with you. I don't choose these dates. But the reason they're holding this orientation session is because we have, I think it's 3 new mayors on the commission. And some townships have appointed new industrial representatives as well. So they wanted to get everybody sort of on the same page again. And so this orientation session will be from 1 to 4 on March the 20th. And I'm inviting, of course, Deputy Mayor Deschamps to be there because he's my alternative in the case of I get
I'll
knocked
see what I
off,
can do tomorrow.
knocked
Hopefully
off
nobody
by a
notices.
bus. But I'm going to invite other members of council to be present as well. And I think, Mr. CIO, you should try to get it into your calendar if you would as well. So, and I know that CEO McKinstry's not back, I believe it's the 21st, right? So be a good opportunity for you to kind of see what's happening around that table. I'm going to tell you, sometimes I shake my head, but anyway.
Where's that held at?
Now, the location is yet to be determined, so I'll have to let everybody know. We get it in the calendars. And the last thing on my report, just a notice, that MP Barrett will hold a sort of an update breakfast or a networking breakfast, courtesy or hosted by the Brockville District Chamber of Commerce on Tuesday, March the 5th at the Brockville Golf and Country Club, west end of Brockville. And they generally hold these things sort of start at 7:30, breakfast starts at 8, finished by 9. And that day happens to be a county council meeting, so I will have to leave about 8:45 to 9. But it is open and it's $25 for chamber members. The Township of Edwardsburg Cardinal is a chamber member through the South Grenville District Chamber of Commerce, so you can ask for the $25 fee, but they do like to have RSVPs in advance, and it's always a lot smoother for them if you sort of can pay online and get the little confirmation online. So, that's the mayor's report, and if there's any questions, I'll answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to call the question that the council receives the mayor's report as presented. Any questions? Hearing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And where am I here? Next item on the agenda is the question period. Are there any questions? You've stayed the whole time.
I'm here, I might as well.
Better than dinner than all.
Actually, what are we doing for growth? It sounds great that we have industrial growth and stuff maybe looking at us. What are we doing on the residential end?
Well, as you may or may not know, we have quite a number of privately owned, severed properties, yours will soon be one of them, throughout the township. I don't know that all of those private owners are publicly advertising their lots for sale, and we don't make, it's not our responsibility to market private properties, but if, and I don't even know whether our community development committee, our community development coordinator maintains an inventory of those. It's
Okay.
one thing, it is something.
Do we have enough residential potential to support jobs, thousands of jobs in one application in the center of our?
Well, in fact, we do, because
Okay.
even a place like Greenfield Ethanol is drawing employees from Cornwall to Kingston.
Yeah,
So we're drawing from that entire region.
I understand that. I just wonder if growth is, our residential growth is not as abundant, which doesn't help us with schools and everything else that our community could benefit from.
Okay, but speaking to that, I was gonna mention as well, we do have a, how many lot subdivision in Cardinal, all approved.
Mm-hmm.
How many?
42.
42 lot subdivision. I think it's, I think we expanded a little bit beyond 42. The subdivision in Cardinal has all of its approvals and is ready for the shovels, if I can put it that way.
Mhm.
The developer
Mm-hmm.
who owns it he hasn't proceeded to go to the first phase because the school closed and he was
Yeah, exactly.
reluctant to worry about the market. So that subdivision has all its approval, and then on the west side of County Road 22, at the north of the town, of the village,
Yep.
there's another subdivision that has its survey, and I don't know exactly what stage that subdivision is at. How far has it gone? Got some approvals in place.
Through the chair, there's limited approvals in place, and actually that will be coming forth at the next CDC meeting.
Okay, so the second subdivision, the owner is proceeding to get his approvals in place as well.
Mhm.
So, I mean, altogether, we have well over, when the second subdivision gets its approvals in place, we'll have well over 100 lots, residential lots,
Mm-hmm.
on sewer and water
Mhm.
that are available, depending on demand and the developer's appetite for risk, if I can put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether that answers your question.
Well, it's a starting point. I mean, whenever I hear something go across that's thousands of jobs, I'm thinking, where are these people coming from? And it's great to pull them from other places, but we could use, the infrastructure that follows, residential, money that comes here, children and sports and everything. I have a young family growing up and school closures, it makes us nervous. It's great, that they come from Cornwall, but that doesn't put kids in our backyards. It doesn't, put sports in our area, so.
You're right.
It's great to see it, but, I just wondered if we had a plan in effect to try and grow a little more residential instead of, Kempfel's really moving. I'm thinking that's in our backyard, and what do we have to offer that's gonna entice people to, build a new house here, or Lockwoods or whatever, to push a little harder to have them,
Well, Lockwood owns the subdivision
Yeah,
in
that's,
Cardinal.
that's the one that I knew about, but I knew it was a hold because of the school closure, but is there any incentive for anybody else to look at our area? I know there was lots supposedly in Johnstown area that, went off Queen Street originally in a plan that is sat idle and idle for
But
how
there's the
long?
one at the north end that's getting some development. Right up near the tracks, and it's about half developed, and I think there's about 8 lots left there as well.
But I mean,
No
on the other
servicing.
side of the bridge off of Queen Street, I believe there was originally in the plan for Johnstown, is there not lots in there off of Farengruber's land? Like, I don't know, like, obviously someone wants to hold on to their land, but, it'd be nice if there was some incentive for them to start building here. I'd love to see more people come to our community.
Yeah, our problem is that right now, the provincial policy statements wants us to direct development to, places where there's sewer and water available.
Mm-hmm.
So, when we don't have that in Johnstown.
How many housing starts did we have last year?
Yeah, I think last year we had 19 or 20, I can't remember, we had the report last week. 19 or 20 housing starts last year, but in the 3 or 4 years leading up to last year, we were getting about 22 to 25 housing starts per year. I mean, your point is well taken. For something as monstrous as this,
Which is,
yeah,
we don't know it to happen, but I just,
yeah,
but we've seen quite a bit of growth in Johnstown. I mean, like with everything going on there, and I'm partially involved in the train yard operations that are going in. So, you know, I see that there's potential for even jobs there, you know, and people are coming from somewhere, and not everybody wants to drive. Still, if we had a house, they'd be buying. Or if we had a lot, they may be building.
Well, that's the first thing that'll happen is existing houses that have got for sale signs on them will start to move.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and any questions? All right, so I'm gonna move on. Item number 16 on the agenda is a closed session. We don't have a closed session this evening. And item number 17 is the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Hunter.
Myself, second by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that the mover be granted leave to introduce a bylaw to adopt, confirm, ratify matters dealt with resolution, and this shall constitute first and second reading thereof.
Confirmatory bylaw, first and second reading. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried unanimously. Go ahead.
Move myself, second by Deputy Mayor Deschamps, that a bylaw to adopt, confirm, ratify matters dealt with resolution be now read a third time and finally passed, signed, sealed, number 2019-10.
Okay, and third reading. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is carried. And I think the only other thing I need is the motion to adjourn. Councillor Cameron.
Yes, I have the important one, don't I? Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that Municipal Council does now adjourn at 8:10 p.m.
Motion on the floor. Those in favor?
Aye.
Motion is